let me give you some inspiration from Ronald Reagan. Because before I came here, someone told me if I went onto YouTube in a certain spot, I would get his convention speech in 1980. And I listened to that speech late Saturday night. He could give that speech here today. He said, the Carter administration is a bad cocktail. We have high interest, high inflation, high taxes, low growth, high unemployment, big government. What are the only things that differ today? Because we've cooked the books artificially? The high interest and the high inflation. But that's coming. You cannot spend the kind of money we just spent and not have inflation coming down the pipe. And that is the worst tax on people with pensions, people with cash, and that's going to make people with real estate even richer. So we're going to create a country where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting... Now you're in New York State. Think about something else. There are several states in this union which are highly dependent on the federal government for grants, for Medicaid. We are one of them. Almost 20% of the budget of New York depends on the federal government. We have left this state hostage to the federal government, now controlled. He says he's not a Bolshevik, but he acts like one. Now controlled by a party that knows that the only way they can stay in business in Washington is to keep spending back, and someone tells you, wait, we had the surpluses under Clinton. They're lying. There were no surpluses. That was surpluses using government accounting, not real accounting. That was surpluses adding some of the highest surpluses we had in Social Security, which are going down now. Why? The baby boomers are retired. What we did, forget about the budget process. We took the money out of the trust funds. There is no trust fund. There is no lockbox. That's a lie. They actually spent that. Let's not just talk about freedom and some amorphous principles. Let's talk about common sense accounting. And this is one of the reasons you got to send someone like me back to Congress. Because they don't understand it. I'm the author of the Chief Financial Officer and Financial Manager. Imagine a junior member of the minority party. Reagan was president, but the Congress was controlled by both houses by the Democratic Party. And I was so persistent, I got a bill passed that President Bush signed. Chuck Bowser, the Comptroller General, several years after that said that that bill had already saved us billions of dollars. Now, they dumbed it down. They didn't put it in exactly the way I wanted it, because I wanted the Chief Financial Officer to be a cabinet position. They put it 3 tiers down in the Treasury Department. That's like putting the fox in the chicken coop that appeared in the Washington Times in 1990. Just after that, who's minding the store? We have big problems. We have to wake up America. We have to somehow stop this spending. We're spending money we don't have. We're borrowing from countries that don't share our values. And this country will never be globally competitive, create jobs, and be safe on the road we are now. Now, one of the things I did on the cover of this book, see what I'm carrying here? I'm carrying a congressman's voting card. It's plastic. I have it. It doesn't work anymore, but I got it in my pocket. It's a computer, okay? That card, it dawned on me when I was putting in, is a credit card. In fact, the first chapter of this book is the most expensive credit card in the world is a congressman or congresswoman's voting card. And I put it on the front. Credit line, unlimited. Expiration date, never. Bill to future generation. You can imagine the size today. Now, I just gave you the good news. You want the bad? The bad news is that if you took what's really being spent and is off the books, the $12 trillion today, you'd have to add $45 trillion for the liability for Social Security and Medicare that we know we have to pay. But it's not even on the statements that the federal government puts out. I went to testify this year, in February, before the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board, and I just stood up and let them have it. And I said, you are a conflicted group. When I passed this bill to create you, because we needed to get generally accepted accounting principles that was specifically geared to the public, didn't know that they were going to create the FASAB funded by the Treasury Department, the Congressional Budget Office, the GAO, and there's one other government group. So in effect, we did what we did with the rating companies. The people that we're supposed to guard are paying them. There's a conflict of interest. And I told them to their face, you're in conflict. Who comes on before me? David Walker, one of my former partners from Arthur Anderson. Pretty good guy. And he gives his testimony. We were talking about what should be on the books, what should be off the books. I went to my garage and I got the little booklet that was prepared by my firm when we prepared the first prototype statement, the U.S. Consolidated Financial Statements of the United States of America. Because I remember when we did that as a gift to the government, we were hired by the Treasury to unbundle the books of New York City. Don't forget the bailout. We had that bailout. I was one of the partners on that team into Congress when I was elected. So that experience told me that something's wrong with this statement today. And today the statement is 118 pages. Can you imagine giving a member of the public a balance sheet, an income statement that's 108 to testify? So I had to read it. I went with my wife Shirley one day early so I could read that whole thing because these were 24. The little booklet that Arthur Anderson put out had a little footnote saying the liability for Social Security in 1975 was $5 trillion. It's now much more than that. And they said, this is a liability, and we put it on the balance sheet. 5 years later, when we gave it to the Treasury Department as our gift to continue doing, the first thing they did is took the liability off the books and put it as a footnote. And I went before this board, I said, how could, because David Walker said, well, you know something? The law says, Social Security, that if we run out, and Medicare too, if the trust fund runs out, there's no legal obligation for the United States of America to pay. Can you imagine? People have voted for senators and congressmen when they said it's a lockbox, remember Gore, right? And it's a trust fund, but now here's the Comptroller General of the United States saying we don't have to put it on the books because we don't have to pay it if we run out. I said, tell that to the people. They voted for people on it. And then I said to him, you know, you've got this foundation, the Pete Peterson Foundation, you just took out a 2-page ad in the New York Times, and you said that the liability is $45 trillion for those. How could you tell the people that that's what our liability is, but you don't want to put it on the books? I get a call last week. He just did a book, Come Back America. One of the people that was there said, Joe, you won. In this book, he's changed his mind. He's now putting on the statements that are important. You know, there's a definition of truth, I don't know whether Thomas Paine said it, that all it wants, the truth, and all it seeks is the liberty of appearing. That's all. It just wants to appear. And sooner or later, there's a lot more to say, but I can't say it today. But remember what Ronald Reagan said. The closest thing to eternal life in Washington is a government program. Once you start it, you can never get rid of it. And you can say the same about taxes. And be careful. No tax increases. And make sure the Bush tax cuts do not get eliminated because that's going to be a tax increase. And be careful. You're in New York State. Don't listen to this revenge tax, $50 billion, and get duped. New York's future is now, unfortunately for us, with those fire industries, brokerage firms, insurance, reinsurance, all those financial firms. And we can't do anything to endanger them because then you'll see a hole in our budget that no one's going to be able to fix. Well, God bless you. Nice to be here.